In the deep cold of space, far beyond the shining stars and silent moons, a story moved like a shadow from world to world, from ship to ship, from mouth to mouth. It was not written in any book, and it was not part of official records, but still, every alien commander, every navigator, and every soldier knew it. They spoke of it in quiet voices, afraid that even saying the words too loud would bring disaster. The story was simple, yet powerful. Never scan a human warship. The humans were not the oldest race in the galaxy. They were not the largest, nor the most advanced in pure technology. The galaxy had seen empires older than human history, rulers who had built floating cities before humans even learned to sail the oceans of their home world. Yet still, when it came to the subject of human warships, even the wisest alien leaders fell silent. Even the smartest alien species, with their massive knowledge and deep science, refused to scan them. Why was this so? No one could ever give a full answer. Some said it was superstition. Others said it was fear left over from ancient wars. But in the heart of every alien fleet, there was a strange unease. If a human warship appeared on their scanners, the safe order was always the same. Do not probe, do not test, do not scan. Keep your distance. Keep your silence. Legends told of curious admirals who ignored this unwritten law. They wanted to know more. They wanted to prove they were braver. They ordered their scanners to lock onto human ships. They pushed their science officers to find weaknesses. But every story ended in disaster. Ships went silent and never returned. Crews lost their minds. Some even turned their weapons on their own fleets without warning. And in all of these tales, the human warship was never destroyed, never touched, never even scratched. It was as if the warships carried something unseen, something more than steel and firepower. Some whispered that the ships had spirits, living shadows hiding inside. Others believed the humans had built defenses so advanced that even looking at them in the wrong way caused collapse. Whatever the reason, no alien dared to find out. The fear was stronger than curiosity. And so the rule spread from empire to empire, from trading post to military academy. It was passed down from captain to young recruit, spoken softly but always remembered. Do not scan the humans. The words became a warning, a command, a law of survival. Yet, mysteries have a way of calling to the mind. The unknown always tempts those who think they are stronger, smarter, more daring. Among alien fleets there were always a few who wondered, what secret do humans hide? Why do their ships drift so calmly in the void? Why do they never seem worried when larger fleets surround them? Could it be that the fear was only a lie? Could it be that the humans had created the greatest bluff in the history of the galaxy? The thought of it made young alien officers restless. They wanted to prove themselves. They wanted to look into the darkness and say, "We are not afraid." But whenever the temptation grew, there was always an older voice to stop them. An elder captain who had seen too much, who had lived through old battles. That voice would remind them, do not scan a human warship. The strange thing was that even most logical alien minds obeyed the warning. Species who trusted only in reason and evidence. Species who built their lives on pure logic, even they refused to take the risk. They could not explain it with science. They could not prove it with experiments. But still they turned away from the thought. Something deep in their memory, something hidden in their history, told them that this was no ordinary superstition. Imagine the endless void where stars shine like cold fire. Imagine fleets of powerful alien ships moving across the darkness, each of these ships filled with pride, filled with strength. Yet when a single human warship appeared, silence fell over their bridges. Every officer sat straighter, every breath grew heavier. They kept their scanners quiet. They did not dare. They looked at the humans like one looks at a predator resting. With closed eyes, knowing it could wake at any moment, the human warships themselves did nothing strange on the outside. They moved like any other ship. They sent signals when needed. Sometimes they even looked weak, alone, small compared to the vast alien fleets. But this appearance was a mask. Everyone knew that inside them, behind their cold metal walls, something more waited. Some called it madness, some called it defense, some called it a curse. No alien wished to be the one to uncover which truth was real. For centuries, this mystery lived on. It became part of the very identity of space travel. Just as stars shone and black holes swallowed light, just as asteroids drifted and planets spun, so too was the fact remembered. Humans had warships that must never be scanned, and so the hook of the story tightens. What is hidden inside those ships? What power or curse makes even the smartest aliens decline to scan them? What could be so terrifying that curiosity itself is crushed? The galaxy holds many secrets, but none as sharp and whispering as this one. In the silence of the void, a question waits with cold patience. What happens to those who dare to break the rule? It was a question no one wanted answered, but it was also a question that no mind could fully escape. For as long as the stars shine, and as long as human warships drift quietly through space, the mystery will follow them, pulling at the thoughts of all who see them, drawing them closer, tempting them, and always, the final echo returns in a soft warning: never scan a human warship. Asterisk, far out on the edge of human space, an alien fleet drifted like a wall of iron across the void. The ships were massive, shaped like blades and wings, glowing with strange blue fire as they patrolled the borders. Their commanders believed they ruled this part of the galaxy. They believed no one could cross their line without paying respect. Yet that night, on their long-range scans, something strange appeared: a single human warship. Drifting calm and silent, the alien officers crowded around their control screens. They whispered to each other in nervous tones. The ship was alone. Its engines low, its weapons cold. To them, it looked weak, almost broken. Some of the younger officers smirked and laughed. They said the humans had grown careless. They said it was only a lonely patrol ship, nothing to fear. But the commander of the fleet did not laugh. His face stayed dark and tense, for he knew the stories. He had heard them since he was young. The stories always began the same way. A lone human ship appears, quiet and harmless. It looks like easy prey, a perfect chance to test strength. And then, silence, fleets lost, crews gone, human ships drifting away untouched. The commander had sworn never to be the fool who tested that curse. Still, the presence of the human ship disturbed his crew. They could not understand how a single vessel dared to wander so deep into alien territory. It was like a mouse walking into a nest of serpents. It made no sense. The aliens began to murmur louder. Some said the humans wanted to provoke them. Some said the humans were sending a message. And a few reckless voices asked the forbidden question: why don't we scan it? The command deck fell silent at those words. Every officer turned to look at the commander. The scanners glowed faintly, waiting to be used. A single command. And they could know everything: its weapons, its crew size, its shields, its weaknesses. Knowledge that could be priceless. Knowledge that could make the fleet stronger. The commander clenched his hands behind his back. He remembered his training, the warnings of his mentors. He remembered the ancient stories told in shadows. They said that scanning a human warship was not like scanning any other vessel. They said the ship itself knew when it was being touched, as if it was alive. They said the ship would not forgive. He could feel the tension on his bridge, young eyes burning with hunger for answers, old eyes heavy with fear. One of his science officers leaned closer. His voice was low, almost a whisper. With respect, Commander, perhaps the stories are just lies. Perhaps the humans spread them to frighten us. If we scan now, we could learn their secret. We could finally know the truth. The man's fingers hovered over the controls, his eyes glowing with dangerous curiosity. The commander's chest felt heavy. He could almost hear the voices of the lost fleets in the back of his mind. He could see the faces of admirals who thought the same way and never returned. Yet doubt is a powerful thing. It crept into his thoughts. What if the humans had tricked the galaxy for centuries? What if their warships were nothing but floating iron? What if the fear itself was the only weapon they carried? Outside, the human ship drifted slowly. Its black hull swallowed starlight. Its surface gave no clear sign of life, no signal of fear, no sign of defense. It was silent, patient, like a predator watching from the shadows. The longer the alien fleet stared at it, the more uneasy they felt for every second that passed. It seemed less like prey and more like something ancient. The younger officers began to push harder. Their voices rose. "We must scan it, Commander. We cannot let this chance go. If the humans are weak, we can crush them now. If they are strong, at least we will finally know why." The commander felt the pull of their words. He could almost feel the weight of history pressing on him. If he refused, the younger crew would call him a coward. If he allowed it, he risked his entire fleet. Then, in the quiet, another voice spoke. It was an older officer, his face marked with years of battle. His voice was calm, but his eyes were sharp. "Commander, do not listen. I was there, many years ago. I saw what happened when my own admiral broke the rule. He scanned a human ship. He wanted the secret, and in one breath, we lost everything. Our engines screamed. Our weapons turned against us. Our minds filled with voices that did not belong to us. I am alive only because my escape pod drifted into silence." The deck froze. Everyone stared at the old soldier. His words carried no laughter, no drama, only truth. The younger officers swallowed their courage. They turned back to their screens in silence. Yet still, the human ship remained there, waiting. The commander walked closer to the view screen. His eyes locked on the drifting warship. He wondered what it was like inside. Did humans sit calmly at their controls, smiling in the dark? Did they know the power they carried? Did they enjoy watching fear spread through alien fleets? He felt a cold thought rise inside him. What if the humans left their ships exposed on purpose? What if this was their trap, not of weapons, but of minds? The silence stretched long across the deck. The temptation clawed at every officer. The scanners hummed, hungry for a command, and still, the human warship floated like a sleeping giant. Calm, dark, and untouchable. At that moment, the commander felt the weight of choice pressing on his soul. He could obey the warnings, keep his fleet safe, and let the humans drift away. Or he could order the scan, break the ancient law, and learn a truth that no alien dared to carry. His heart pounded, his breath slowed. And still, outside, the warship waited. It did not move, it did not speak, but its silence was louder than any weapon. And deep in his bones, the commander knew that ship was watching him too. Asterisk. The fleet hung silent in the endless dark, every alien officer watching the lonely human warship drifting in the void. The commander stood tall on the deck, but inside, his heart was heavy. His mind replayed the words of the old veteran, the survivor who had once seen what happened when someone dared to break the rule. That story was not the first, and it would not be the last. There were many such stories whispered through the stars, carried like warnings carved into the soul of the galaxy. The commander remembered his training days at the military academy. He was still young then, eager and curious. He wanted to prove his strength, like all cadets. But the lessons about humans had always been different. Other species were studied with logic, charts, and details. They measured the thickness of armor, the range of weapons, the strength of engines. But when it came to humans, the lessons turned into warnings. The instructors did not give data. They told tales, stories that sounded more like nightmares than facts. One story came from the archives of the Zurak Empire, centuries old. The Zurak had been proud and clever. They built ships that carried entire cities. They believed no other race could outthink them. When the humans first appeared, the Zurak laughed at their small fleets. They thought humans were children playing with toys. So one day, a Zurak admiral ordered a full scan of a human dreadnought. The scanners activated. Bright beams touched the human hull, and then chaos. The record said the Zurak ships went blind. Their scanners burned out. Their navigation spun out of control. Some of their warships even fired on each other without command. The human dreadnought never fired a single shot. It simply drifted. Closer, silent, the Zirac fleet tore itself apart, and only fragments of ships floated in the aftermath. That battle was never written into Zirac pride, but every captain knew the truth. Never scan a human warship. Another story came from the Vayari, a species of thinkers. Their minds were like living computers. They did not believe in fear. They believed only in logic. So when they faced humans in a border conflict, they decided to test the mystery. A team of their brightest scientists prepared the strongest scan the galaxy had ever seen. They believed no trick, no defense, no curse could stand against their pure logic. The scan began, data filled their screens, and then their minds broke. The Vayari survivors described it as a storm of voices, human voices, speaking in patterns they could not understand. The data did not appear as numbers or signals. It appeared as visions in their heads, visions of fire, oceans, storms, and endless war. Some screamed until their throats tore, some clawed at their eyes, some turned their weapons on their own cities when they returned home. The Vayari called it the mind burn, and from that day, even their most logical leaders bowed to the warning. Never scan a human warship. The commander also remembered the story of the Olnari, a warrior race, strong and fearless. They had no patience for whispers or legends. They wanted proof, so their fleet of 50 warships surrounded a single human carrier. They believed numbers would protect them. They believed no curse could strike all of them at once. The Olnari admiral gave the order, and 50 scanners locked onto the human vessel. What happened next was spoken of only in fragments. The Olnari ships vanished from every record at the same second. 50 warships erased from space. No distress calls, no wreckage, no signal, only silence. The human carrier floated away calmly, as if nothing had happened. Some claimed the Olnari were pulled into another dimension. Some claimed they were burned into starlight itself. The Olnari never spoke of it again, because there were no survivors to tell the tale. On the alien command deck, the younger officers listened as the old veteran whispered these stories once more. Their faces grew pale, their voices grew quiet. They had asked why no one scanned human warships. Now they had answers. Dark and heavy, the veteran's words were not lessons in science. They were scars of history. The room itself seemed colder as his voice carried across the silence. The commander felt the weight of the stories pressing on his shoulders. He understood now why his hands trembled at the thought of giving the order. This was not fear of the unknown, it was memory. A memory carved into the bones of the galaxy itself. To scan a human warship was not just an act of curiosity. It was an act of suicide. Still, the younger minds struggled with doubt. One of them whispered, "But these are old tales. They could be lies. They could be stories created by humans too. Make us fear them. What if the warships are nothing more than metal shells? What if the secret is empty?" His words drifted into the air. Tempting, dangerous. The commander turned sharply. His eyes burned with a cold fire. "Would you wager your life, and the lives of this entire fleet, on a doubt?" he asked. The officer lowered his head, his voice lost. The silence that followed was heavier than any weapon, and still, outside the view screen, the human warship floated, quiet and patient. Its dark surface gave no answers. Its silence was like a hand reaching into the hearts of every alien on the deck, pulling at their fear, tugging at their curiosity. The longer they watched, the louder the old stories seemed to echo in their minds. The commander closed his eyes. He could almost hear the screams of the Zirac as their ships burned. He could almost see the madness in the Vayari eyes as they tore themselves apart. He could almost feel the silence of the Olnari as their fleet vanished into nothing. These were not just tales. These were warnings carved in blood and fire. Warnings that lived on because no one ever returned to deny them. The younger officers stayed quiet now. Their hands rested away from the scanners. Their eyes no longer burned with curiosity. Instead, they held fear. The same fear that had carried across generations. Fear that was not weakness, but survival. And so the human warship drifted, and the alien fleet watched. Locked in the tension between curiosity and memory, the commander's voice was low, almost a whisper. "There is no victory in knowing what destroys you," he said. "And there is no wisdom in testing a curse. We will not be the next story whispered in shadows. We will not scan the humans." Yet even as he spoke, even as his fleet held their silence, the mystery burned in every heart. What secret lay inside those dark ships? What power was strong enough to silence entire empires? The galaxy would never stop asking. The legend would never stop growing, and the humans would never stop drifting, calm, patient, untouchable, *in. The silent dark of space, the alien fleet still watched the lone human warship. It drifted slowly as if time itself bowed to its patience. The younger officers tried to focus on their duties, but their eyes always returned to the black shape outside their view screens. They could not look away. It was not only the ship itself that held their attention, but the weight of the stories that wrapped around it. The commander had reminded them of the old warnings, but warnings alone could not explain everything. There had to be a reason why even the most logical, even the most fearless, obeyed the same law. The truth was that humans had earned a reputation unlike any other race in the galaxy. It was not a reputation built only from their ships, but from their history, from their way of life, from the fire that seemed to burn inside them. Humans were not the strongest, not the oldest, not even the most advanced, but they were the most dangerous because they were unpredictable. Long ago, before they built their first warships, humans were divided across their own home world. They fought wars with sticks, then with swords, then with weapons of fire and iron. When one enemy rose stronger, humans did not bow. They adapted. They found new ways to fight. They found ways to win when winning should have been impossible. It was said that in human history, there was no weapon they did not turn into a tool, no tool they did not turn into a weapon. This way of survival carried into the stars. When humans finally built ships to cross the void, they carried their old instincts with them. They did not build ships only for defense. They built ships as if every voyage might become a battlefield. Their warships were not machines of pride or beauty like other empires. They were machines of survival, layered with secrets and hidden claws. Some alien scholars claimed that human ships had more than weapons and shields. They carried systems that could confuse scanners, bending signals like mirrors. A warship could look empty on one scan, then appear as an entire fleet on another. Others claimed that humans built their ships with living minds inside. Not just machines, but artificial intelligence that was awake, thinking and waiting. If a scan touched it, the eye would strike back, attacking not with missiles, but with raw signals that tore through alien systems like knives. The rumors grew wilder with each telling. Some whispered that human warships carried ghosts. Not real ones, but fragments of human thought copied into their machines. If a scan tried to touch them, it was like touching the mind of 1,000 warriors. The result was madness, confusion, collapse. To some, this explained why entire fleets went insane after scanning humans. To others, it was proof that humans were not only fighters of flesh, but of spirit. But there was something deeper, something even more unsettling. Humans themselves never denied the rumors. They never explained, never laughed, never tried to clear the fear. When alien diplomats asked, the humans only smiled. Sometimes they would answer with silence, sometimes with a simple phrase, "Try if you wish." And that silence was worse than any weapon, because when a species refuses to explain its power, it means it has no fear of your curiosity. The reputation of humans spread faster than their ships. On distant worlds where no human had ever set foot, their name was still spoken in hushed voices. Young alien cadets whispered of human fleets in training halls. Traders told stories of human captains who stared down empires without flinching. And across every military command, one lesson was repeated like scripture: never scan a human warship. The commander knew these things. He had seen the effects of human reputation in action. Years ago, during a border conflict, his fleet had faced a squadron of human ships. The battle should have been even, their numbers equal, but before a single shot was fired, the other alien fleets began to retreat. They did not want to stand on the same battlefield as humans. They abandoned the fight before it began. The humans won that day without moving. Not with weapons, but with fear on the command deck. The younger officers spoke again, but their voices were softer now. "Commander," one asked, "is it true that some human ships are built with false signals? That even if we dared to scan them, we would only see lies?" Another added. "I heard that one warship can project the voices of its dead crew into the minds of anyone who tries. That's why they call them ghost ships." The commander said nothing. He did not need to answer. The silence was the answer. Reputation is a weapon sharper than any blade. The humans knew this well. They let the galaxy build the stories for them. They did not need to prove their strength every time. The mystery itself fought their battles. The more fear grew, the less they had to fire a single shot. And yet, in that mystery, there was truth. Something was inside those ships, something real. But no alien wanted to be the one to uncover it. The human warship outside drifted closer. Its hull reflected faint light, a predator's shadow. The aliens on the bridge felt their throats tighten. Some lowered their eyes, afraid the ship itself might feel their gaze. It did not move, it did not signal, but its presence filled the void. The commander spoke at last, his voice slow and heavy. "This is the reputation of humans. Not built in one day, not built by one battle, but built by centuries of fear. They want us to wonder, they want us to doubt, and that doubt will destroy us before they ever need to fight." His words pressed into the silence like a blade. The younger officers nodded, their courage fading into unease. They now understood why the galaxy bent to human mystery. They now understood why even the smartest races declined to scan. It was not only fear of death. It was fear of the unknown, fear of being broken by something they could not explain. And still, the ship drifted, silent, waiting, as if it carried all the weight of human history inside its walls, as if it dared the fleet to forget the warnings, as if it whispered into the void, "Come closer if you dare." Asterisk, the human warship drifted in silence, black against the stars, calm as if it owned the void itself. On the alien command deck, the officers could no longer keep still. The fear of old stories and the heavy shadow of human reputation weighed on them. But beneath that fear another feeling grew, curiosity. The silence of the human ship was not only frightening, it was insulting. To float so calm before a great alien fleet, to move without fear, it felt like mockery. The youngest officer spoke first. His voice tight but bold. "Commander, we should not sit here like prey. We are the hunters. We are stronger in number. Why do we watch like cowards? A single scan and we could know everything. We could take away their mystery." His words lit a fire in the others. They shifted in their seats, some nodding, some whispering. The temptation was spreading. The science officer leaned forward, his eyes locked on the glowing scanner controls. "Commander, with respect, if we allow this human ship to drift past us, we will lose a chance the galaxy may never give again. We could break the fear. We could learn their secret. Imagine what power it would bring us. We could become the fleet that finally unmasks the humans." His words echoed in the chamber. Heavy with hunger, the commander's jaw tightened. He had sworn never to allow such madness, but even he felt the pull. The human ship seemed too calm, too open. It drifted without shields raised, without weapons glowing. It was as if it begged them to look closer. And the longer it drifted, the stronger the temptation became. The old veteran shook his head, his voice cracked with warning. "Do not listen. I saw what happened before. I saw my admiral make the same choice, the moment the scanners touched. The ship fought back, not with weapons, but with something we could not fight. The crew screamed, the ships broke, and nothing could stop it. But the younger officers no longer cared for shadows of the past. They wanted answers. The commander felt torn. On one side stood survival, the ancient rule that had kept fleets alive for centuries. On the other side stood glory, the promise of being the one who uncovered the truth. He felt the weight of both pressing on him. The silence of the human warship was louder than any voice, daring him to act. The science officer's hand hovered closer to the control panel. His voice lowered to a whisper, but everyone heard it. "One pulse, Commander. That is all it takes. One pulse and we will know if the legends are lies." The bridge seemed to hold its breath. The human ship outside drifted a little closer, its hull black as a shadow. A strange ripple of light moved across its surface, faint, like a ghost of energy. The aliens froze. Was it a shield, a weapon, or something else? The science officer whispered again. "They hide something. I can feel it. Let us see. Let us know." The commander closed his eyes. He remembered the warnings. The Zyrak fleet burned blind. The Vayari driven to madness. The Olari vanished without trace. Yet he also remembered the words of his own instructors, whispered long ago. Curiosity is the weapon of humans. They do not need to fire if they can make you doubt. Was he falling into that trap now? Or had the time come to face the truth? The younger officers grew restless. "Commander, if we turn away now, we return with nothing. We will look weak before our people. We will let a single human ship mock us." Their voices were sharp, filled with pride and fear mixed together. Pride wanted to strike, fear wanted to obey. The commander felt trapped between both. The human warship drifted still, silent, watching without eyes, waiting without movement. It was like a black hole of thought, pulling every alien mind into its silence, pulling them closer to the edge of choice. The science officer pressed again. "Louder now. Let me scan, Commander. If I am wrong, punish me. If I am right, the galaxy will remember us as the ones who destroyed the human myth." The bridge buzzed with whispers of agreement. The temptation had grown too strong. The old veteran slammed his hand on the console, his voice rising like thunder. "Fools, you speak of glory, but you do not understand. The humans are not a myth. They are a wound carved into the galaxy. They do not care if you believe. They do not need you to fear. The moment you scan them, you invite them inside, and once they are inside, you will never be free." His words shook the air. But still the temptation clung to the younger minds. The commander's breath grew slow, heavy. He stared at the human warship. He felt it staring back. He whispered to himself, "If they are bluffing, we end it here. If they are not, then we are already lost." The silence of the ship seemed to answer him, whispering without sound. "Choose, choose now." His hand moved toward the console. His officers leaned forward, waiting for the command. The veteran closed his eyes, knowing what was coming. Outside, the human warship shifted. A faint pulse of light moved along its hull. Like a slow heartbeat, the temptation was no longer a whisper. It was a storm. The bridge filled with voices. "Scan them, Commander, scan them now." The science officer's hand trembled, ready to strike the control. The younger officers burned with hunger. The old veteran prayed to the stars, and in that moment, the fate of the fleet hung by a single breath. A choice between survival and glory, between legend and truth, between obeying the warnings of the past and breaking them. The human warship drifted closer, silent, patient, waiting like a predator with its claws hidden. The temptation was complete, and the commander knew there would be no turning back. The human warship floated in silence, black and sharp against the glitter of the stars. Around it the alien fleet moved like hunters circling prey, yet none of them dared to strike. The ship gave no signal, no message, no sound. It only drifted, patient, as though it had all the time in the universe. On the bridge of the flagship, tension pressed on every officer like a heavy chain. The commander stood rigid, his eyes locked on the dark vessel. He knew the rule. Every captain in the galaxy knew it. Never scan a human warship. Still, that rule felt like a blade at his throat. His fleet was mighty. His officers were clever. And yet here they stood, paralyzed by silence. The youngest officers whispered to one another, their voices eager, What if the stories are lies? One asked. What if the humans are nothing but cowards hiding behind shadows? We could prove it, Commander. We could be the first to see the truth. Their whispers grew louder, pride swelled in their words, curiosity blazed in their eyes. The science officer leaned close to the commander. His hands hovered above the glowing console. It would take only one pulse, Commander. One scan, and we will know. One scan, and we can strip away their mystery. Think of the power, think of the honor. We would not only face the humans, we would unmask them. His words struck the ears of the crew like sparks in dry wood. The commander's jaw clenched. He wanted to silence them. He wanted to remind them of the stories, the fleets destroyed, the minds shattered. Yet even he felt the pull. For years he had carried the weight of the warnings, but he had never seen the truth with his own eyes. Now the truth drifted in front of him, waiting, daring him to look closer. The old veteran rose from his chair. His voice was rough, cracked, with age but strong with memory. You speak of honor, but I speak of survival. I was there when my admiral ordered the scan. I watched as our ships screamed with voices that were not our own. I saw men claw their eyes out. I saw weapons fire without command. And when it was over, only I remained, floating in silence. Do not tempt the same fate. The bridge fell still at his words. But silence was not enough. Curiosity grew stronger. Feeding on pride, the younger officers muttered again. They say the humans build their ships with minds. What if that is true? Wouldn't it be glorious to defeat such a thing? They say the ships carry ghosts. Wouldn't it be worth knowing? If it is real, they say the reputation of humans is only fear. Perhaps they are nothing but smoke. The commander's eyes narrowed. He looked at the human vessel drifting so calmly. He felt it staring back, though no signal came. Was it a bluff? Could a single warship truly carry such terror? Or had the humans tricked the galaxy with stories, using fear as their sharpest weapon? If so, then this moment was a chance to break that weapon. The science officer's voice dropped lower, almost a whisper. If we turn away, we will remain blind. The humans will go on laughing at us. The galaxy will still bow to their shadows. But if we scan, if we learn, we will rise above them, Commander. We will be the ones remembered in history. His hand trembled above the control. The scanner lights glowed faintly, ready to awaken. The commander could feel the eyes of his crew, half burned with fear, half burned with hunger. He stood in the middle, pulled by both sides. His mind echoed with the old rule, never scan a human warship. Yet his heart whispered something else. If no one dares, the mystery will never end. If no one dares, the humans will rule with silence forever. The human vessel shifted slightly, not in aggression, but in calm movement. A ripple of faint light ran across its hull, soft as a heartbeat. It was small, harmless, yet it made the alien officers shiver. It felt as though the ship was answering their thoughts, as though it knew the question they debated. The youngest officer stepped forward, his voice rising. Commander, we cannot let fear chain us. This is our chance. Our fleets are mighty. Our weapons are many. What can one human warship do against us all? His words rang through the chamber. And for the first time, others nodded openly. The temptation had grown into fire. The old veteran slammed his fist on the console. Do you fools not hear yourselves? Do you not see? This is how it begins. This is what they want. They wait. They tempt. They let you draw closer. And when you break the rule, it is already too late. You speak of power, but you speak with the voice of a corpse that does not know it is dead. His warning cut sharp, but pride is a dangerous poison, and many had already swallowed it. The commander felt sweat on his brow. His heart beat slow, heavy, louder than the hum of engines. He stared at the human ship, black and patient. He whispered to himself, if they are bluffing, then this ends tonight. If they are not, then we are already damned. The silence of the warship gave no answer, but it felt like a smile in the dark. The science officer looked at his commander. One last time. Give the order, he said. His finger hovered above the switch. The bridge waited. Breaths caught in their throats, pride and fear battled in their eyes. Outside, the human ship drifted closer, its shadow stretching across the stars like the wings of a predator. The commander's voice broke the silence at last, but it was low, almost a growl. "One pulse," he said. The science officer's eyes widened. His finger slammed down. The scanner lights flared to life, and in that single moment, the ancient rule was broken. Asterisk. The scanner lights burned bright across the alien command deck. A pulse of energy shot out into the void, invisible to the eye yet heavy as a storm. It struck the surface of the human warship, crawling across its black hull like fingers across stone. For one breath, nothing happened. The bridge fell silent. Every officer leaned forward, hearts racing, waiting for answers, waiting for truth. The science officer's screen lit up with streams of data, symbols, and shifting signals. At first it looked like a normal scan, readings of metal, power, engines. But then the numbers twisted. The symbols changed shape. Letters appeared in languages none of them used. Voices whispered through the speakers, though no one had spoken. The science officer's smile froze. Confusion replaced excitement. This is not possible," he whispered. His hands scrambled across the console. But the more he tried to control it, the faster the data swarmed. The commander's jaw clenched. He stepped closer. "Shut it down," he ordered. The officers' hands shook. I can't. It's inside already." A wave of static rolled through the bridge. Lights flickered. The ship trembled, though no weapon had fired. On the screens, shapes began to form. Not data, not numbers, but images, oceans raging with storms, fire sweeping across cities, human faces staring with eyes empty and cold. The crew gasped. Some clutched their heads. Others staggered back from their consoles. Voices filled the speakers now, human voices, layered one on top of another, loud and endless, speaking in words no alien could understand, yet each syllable stabbed into their minds like knives. One officer screamed and tore the headset from his ears. His eyes rolled as blood dripped from his nose. Another slammed fists against the console, shouting at voices only he could hear. The science officer fell back in his chair, whispering, "They're in here. They're inside my head." His eyes widened, wild and lost. The commander roared, "Shut down the scanners now." But the consoles did not obey. The controls glowed red. Alarms screamed. The scanners had become doors, and the human ship had walked through them. It was not their machines under attack anymore. It was their minds outside. The human warship had not moved. It drifted calm, silent, untouched. Yet its hull pulsed faintly with ripples of energy. Like the beating of a heart, the alien fleet shuddered. Ships groaning as systems flickered on and off. Navigation spun out of control. Weapons locked and unlocked on their own. Engines roared, though no one commanded them. One frigate turned its guns toward an ally, firing without warning. Blasts of fire cut through the void, tearing into the hull of its sister ship. Screams filled the comms as the fleet collapsed into confusion. The commander's voice thundered across the bridge. "Hold your fire, hold your systems." But no one listened, because no one could. Their ships were no longer theirs. The old veteran staggered to his feet, his voice broken but strong. "I told you, I warned you. The moment you scan them, they own you." His words were drowned by another wave of static as the lights went dark. For a moment, the bridge was blind. Only the glow of the human warship outside remained, like a black star in the void. When the lights returned, the crew looked around in horror. Some of their own officers were no longer at their posts. They had drawn weapons, eyes glazed and empty. They fired at their own comrades, shouting in voices that were not their own. The commander drew his blade and struck one down. His hands shook as he realized the truth. "They're turning us against ourselves," he whispered. The science officer crawled on the floor, clutching his head. His voice was hoarse. "It's not a ship, it's a mind, it's all of them. Every human thought, every war, every scream, they put it inside their walls. And now it's inside us." His words ended in a broken laugh before his eyes rolled back and his body fell limp. The bridge filled with chaos, officers fighting officers, systems fighting systems. The commander shouted orders, but his words were drowned in the storm of human voices filling the ship. Outside, more alien vessels fired blindly, tearing into their own fleet. Beams of fire lit the void as their once proud formation collapsed into madness, and still, the human warship drifted. It fired no weapons, launched no fighters, it only watched, letting the chaos spread like fire across dry grass. The predator did not need to strike when its prey destroyed itself. The commander gripped the railing, his knuckles white. His fleet was dying, not by human guns, but by human silence. He stared at the black vessel, his voice low. "This is why they never need to fight. This is why no one dares. The war is already." Inside the walls, the old veteran pulled himself closer, his body weak, his voice a whisper. "It is over. Commander, we are already ghosts." His eyes closed, his chest still. The last breath of a man who had seen the truth twice, and this time could not escape it. The commander raised his eyes once more to the dark ship. Its surface pulsed softly, calm, patient. Then, as if nothing had happened, its engines flared. It turned slowly away, leaving behind a broken fleet. The voices faded, the static grew silent, but the damage was done. The alien ships drifted crippled, burning, shattered. The human warship did not look back. It never needed to. The lesson was clear. The commander sank to his knees. His ship was falling apart. His crew was lost. He whispered into the cold air. "We should have obeyed. We should have listened." His voice broke. "Never." "Scan a human warship." The words hung in the air like a final curse, and the silent void swallowed the fleet, leaving only the dark shadow of a human warship drifting away, calm and untouchable. Asterisk, the void was burning with broken ships. The alien fleet, once proud and mighty, now drifted in ruins. Wreckage floated like ash across the stars, fires licked at the broken hulls of warships. Escape pods spun into the black. The silence after the storm was heavier than any battle cry, for no human weapon had fired, no human hand had struck. And yet the fleet was dying. On the flagship bridge, the commander stood among the chaos. His crew lay scattered, some unconscious, some gone forever. Consoles sparked and smoked. The air was thick with the smell of burning circuits and fear. He could still hear echoes of the voices, human voices, whispering in his mind. They had faded with the warship's departure, but the memory of them lingered like scars carved into his thoughts. The surviving officers clung to their posts, trembling. They were broken, some staring blankly at walls, others clutching their heads as if the voices were still inside. One young officer rocked in his chair, whispering the same words again and again. "Not real, not real, not real." His voice cracked until it was nothing but a hollow echo. Outside, the human warship had already turned its back on them. It drifted away with calm purpose. Its black hull swallowed the light of the stars. To the aliens it looked less like a machine and more like a shadow moving through the universe. It had not fired, it had not spoken, and yet it had left behind a graveyard. The commander's hands trembled as he gripped the railing. His voice was rough, broken by rage and despair. They never needed to fight us," he whispered. "We fought ourselves. We destroyed ourselves." He turned toward his crew, eyes burning. "This is why the warnings exist. This is why no one dares." The old veteran was gone, his body slumped. Where he had fallen, his last words still echoed in the commander's ears. "We are already ghosts." The commander closed his eyes. For once he wished the old man had been wrong, but the wreckage outside proved otherwise. Across the fleet, the survivors struggled, pods ejected into the void. Damaged ships tried to stabilize, but many had no power, no command. Some captains screamed over comms for help, others sent garbled cries before their systems went dark forever. The voices of once proud warriors were now desperate, broken, afraid. On one screen, the commander saw two ships locked together. Their hulls fused from stray fire, flames pouring into space. He saw another vessel spin without control, its crew drifting in pods that would never reach a home. He knew their empire. Would ask him later what had happened, but no words could ever explain this. He could not even explain it to himself. One of his younger officers stumbled toward him, eyes red. "Commander, why? Why do they do this? Why do humans not fight like us? Why do they let us kill ourselves?" The commander stared at him, his voice low. "Because they do not need to fight. Their silence is enough. Their reputation is enough. Their ships are weapons even without firing. We are undone the moment we try to look inside." The officer shook his head. Then how can anyone face them? How can any fleet stand against such a curse? The commander had no answer. He only whispered the words that had been carved into him forever now. "You do not, you obey, you stay away, and you never scan a human warship." The bridge fell quiet. Each survivor sat in silence. Too broken to argue, too scarred to question. The truth had been written in blood and fire. The humans did not need to prove their power anymore. The aliens had proved it for them in the silence of space. The wreckage drifted. It would remain there for years, a warning to any who passed. A graveyard carved by curiosity and pride. Already the story was forming. Already the whispers would spread. Another fleet destroyed, another commander humbled, another reminder, but in the hearts of the survivors, the wound was deeper than fear. It was humiliation for the greatest fleets in the galaxy. For the brightest officers to be undone without a single shot. It was shame wrapped in terror, and that shame would make the story even stronger. The next generation of cadets would hear it. The next generation of captains would obey it. The human warship vanished into the stars, drifting as if nothing had happened. Perhaps it was joining others, perhaps it was alone. It did not matter, one was enough. One had shattered them. The commander stared at the black horizon where it had gone, his voice soft. "They will never tell us their secret. They will never need to. The mystery is their weapon, and we are fools who handed them the blade." Hours passed as the broken fleet tried to gather itself. Distress signals spread into the void, but deep down, every survivor knew the same thing. This was not a battle, this was a lesson, and they had paid with their pride, their ships, and their people. The lesson would not die, it would live on. The commander finally lowered himself into his chair, his body heavy, his eyes hollow. He whispered once more, almost to himself. Never again, never scan a human warship. The survivors around him nodded, their faces pale. The vow had become their law, not by choice, but by force. And as the wreckage drifted in silence, the legend of human warships grew stronger. The smartest aliens, the bravest warriors, the most curious minds, all bowed to the same truth. In the endless dark of space, the humans did not need to roar. They only needed to wait. The consequence was clear, and the galaxy would remember it. The wreckage of the alien fleet drifted through the endless void. Twisted metal spinning slowly among the stars. Broken ships burned in silence, their flames swallowed by the dark. Escape pods scattered like seeds on the wind. Some survivors cried out over weak coms. Others floated wordless in shock, and far away, the human warship drifted calmly, its black hull glowing faintly as it vanished into the horizon. It never fired a weapon. It never spoke a word. And yet, it had ended an entire fleet. On the flagship bridge, the commander sat slumped in his chair. His eyes were hollow, his voice dry. He had seen battles before, but never this. This was no war. This was no fight. This was something else, something far older, far darker. He whispered into the silence. This is why even the smartest decline. This is why no one dares. His surviving officers sat in silence too, some still trembling, some staring into nothing. They were broken in body and in spirit. Their curiosity had been their downfall. Their pride had become their curse. The warnings had not been lies. The legends had not been myths. They were truth carved in destruction. The old veteran had been right, though he had not lived to see the end. His last words echoed in every survivor's mind. We are already ghosts, and in a way, it was true. For even though some still breathed, none of them would ever truly return home the same. They carried something inside now, a shadow of voices, a memory of madness, a fear that could never be erased. Hours passed, and the scattered survivors tried to gather. Some ships had lost engines, some had lost minds. Some officers refused to speak, their eyes still wide as if the voices whispered in their skulls. A few muttered words in human tongue, though they had never learned the language. The commander knew these were scars that would never heal. A come signal cracked weakly to life. A captain from one of the crippled cruisers spoke. His voice was hoarse. "Commander, what shall we tell them when we return? What report shall we give?" The commander stared at the broken stars beyond the glass. His voice came low. "We will tell them nothing but the truth. We scanned and we paid. We will tell them the same rule our ancestors whispered to us. Never scan a human warship." The officer on the come said nothing for a long time. Finally he whispered, "And if they do not believe?" The commander closed his eyes. They will believe, because they will see us. They will see what is left of us. And our silence will say more than words. The survivors drifted, each one knowing their shame would soon be a story, and the galaxy would hear it. The tale would spread like all the others before, but this time it would carry new names, new voices, another warning carved into the endless chain. The humans never needed to defend themselves. Others did it for them. In the days that followed, rescue ships would arrive. They would find the wreckage. They would gather the pods. They would ask questions. Some survivors would speak, their voices trembling. Others would refuse, afraid that even speaking the memory would awaken it again. But all would repeat the same line in the end: never scan a human warship. The commanders of other empires would listen. Their scholars would debate. Their generals would argue. But none would dare to test it. None would risk their fleets. For the legend had been written once again, sealed with blood and silence. And somewhere in the galaxy, the human warship drifted still, calm and quiet. It did not need to know the fear it left behind. It did not need to explain its secret. That was the human way, to let others wonder, to let others fear, to let silence itself become the sharpest weapon. The commander of the broken fleet leaned forward in his chair, his voice soft, almost prayer-like. "We are finished, but the humans remain. They have always remained. They will always remain. For every fleet that dares, for every mind that doubts, the lesson will be the same." He closed his eyes, whispering one last time, "Never scan them, never." The bridge was quiet. The surviving crew sat like statues. The air was thick with smoke and memory. Each of them knew they would carry this warning to their graves. And beyond their graves, the warning would live on. For this was no simple tale, it was now law. Carved into the heart of the galaxy, somewhere in distant halls, future cadets would sit in training. They would whisper of the day a fleet was lost. They would speak the commander's name in hushed tones. They would wonder what he had seen, and their instructors would not give numbers, or charts, or logic. They would only give the same warning, soft and firm: never scan a human warship. And so the circle continued. The mystery grew deeper. The fear grew stronger. The legend walked ahead of the humans like a shadow. Their ships became more than steel. They became myths in the void. Ghosts that drifted silently but commanded more power than any empire's weapons. The humans never denied it. They never explained it. They only watched, silent, patient, and perhaps that was their greatest weapon of all. They did not need to answer, because every fleet that dared had already given the answer for them. The commander of the broken fleet took one final look at the stars. His fleet was gone, his people lost, but the lesson was eternal. He whispered into the silence, "The galaxy will remember. We will not be the last fools, but we will be the last who needed proof. After us, they will not dare again." The void swallowed his words, carrying them into the black. The stars shone cold above him. The human warship was already gone. But its shadow remained, and in that shadow, the final truth stood clear. The humans had won without battle, without fire, without blood spilled by their hands. They had won with silence, with mystery, with fear. And that victory would never end, never scan a human warship.